What is up, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron, and two guests today, Dylan Jackson and Jorge Cantu. What's up, fellas?
I'm doing good. I'm just ready for the NBA season to start. The off season's been too long.
Yeah, agreed. It's been way too long without any NBA basketball. So I'm excited to be here once again. Thank you guys for having me.
So today I saw two car accidents happen. Like in-person car accidents happen.
Knock on wood.
I feel like today is just so hyped up that this podcast is going to be a little special. I'm feeling some juice.
I'm feeling a little wired still from the gym, so I guess we do have some excitement. Before we get started, always quick reminder, you can check us out on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, YouTube. Subscribe, retweet, share. Let us know what you think on Twitter at OTGBasketball. But guys, let's get right into it. Over the weekend, Clint Capela re-signed with the Houston Rockets, 5 years, $90 million. Which is somewhat of a surprise. You know, there was some talk about him signing a qualifying offer, and he got him at $18 million per year, which I think is a pretty good price. What are your thoughts on this one, guys?
This is an absolute steal of a contract. Earlier, it was reported that the Houston Rockets were kind of lowballing Capela, and it turns out that was true. I expected him to sign maybe like $27 million a year. Getting him for only $18 million a year, I think that's a great job by Daryl Morey and the Houston Rockets. Obviously, they're gonna get Melo. So, if anything, I do think their team is gonna maybe decline a little bit. But other than that, they really maintain their talent level.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. To me, it's really fascinating to see how the Rockets didn't even hesitate to give Chris Paul $160 million, if I'm not mistaken. But they were hesitant in giving Capela $100 million, and like, look at Chris Paul's age and look at Capela. Like, there's so much potential. I don't even think that he's hit like his prime yet. So that talks a lot about how the Rockets view Paul and Capela. We saw the Rockets record last year with the Big Three. It was crazy. They lost 3 games, won 40-something. So they needed to bring back Capela. It was a good move for the Rockets because they're not paying as much money in the luxury tax as they were expected, and they'll pay a little bit more once they sign Melo too. But yeah, I mean, Capela got his, less than he expected, but some long-term security, and the Rockets got him back, which they need him if they want to get back to the Western Conference Finals once again.
You guys are pretty much spot on. I think from one standpoint, this is great because I think if Clint Capela came back on the qualifying offer, there may have been some hard feelings, some bad feelings. So obviously, them having this long-term deal, 5 years, $90 million, as Dylan said, $18 million a year for Clint Capela is a steal, especially with how, I mean, his game still isn't fully developed. He's 23, 24 years old. The Rockets now have their core between James Harden, Chris Paul, and Clint Capela, which means they're going to be, a top Western Conference team over the next 4 or 5 years if everything goes right and everyone stays healthy. But, it doesn't push the envelope. They don't get any better from last year. As Dylan said, they got Carmelo. This team is not the 65-win team we saw last year, but this is going to keep them competitive and make them help them remain competitive.
Yeah, and I think from the Rockets side, you got to be really happy about it because Capela improved a lot last year. I think second in most improved player voting. His points per game went up. I think he was top 10 in rebounding, top 5 in blocks per game. Field goal percentage was number 1 in the league. Free throw percentage went up a little bit. So I think from the Rockets perspective, like Dylan said, at $18 million a year, I think Capela, when he hits his prime, could probably be a $25 million a year type of player. So getting him at this price for 5 years kind of really solidifies them as being a solid team in the West for probably the next few seasons.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely shocked he did not take that qualifying offer and instead took this offer, which, again, it's only $18 million a year. And, even in 2K, you can't even get him for 25. So.
Honestly, I was surprised it was under 20. I know there's a couple bonuses, but I don't even think the bonuses push it much higher than 20. So like you said, Daryl Morey definitely had a nice move here. He's been known for getting some good deals done, but this is probably one of the best ones he's got.
If I'm correct, I think only $80 million of that is guaranteed, and with bonuses, it's up to $90 million.
Wow, so that's even a bigger steal. From the Rockets side, you get a player like him who fits the new NBA so well, switchable on D, great pick and roll partner, can roll to the rim. He's got that versatility. It'll be interesting to see what else he can add to his game too.
You know what that means, though? It means Clint Capela wanted to be in Houston.
Yeah, more lobs.
More lobs, and he's playing with 2 point guards. I mean, this isn't a bad place to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think Capella's got to be happy. And then even from a marketing perspective, playing with those guys, being a great team in the NBA, you're more likely to get an endorsement deal or something along those lines. Now, talking a little bit less positive, we're going to kind of talk about some declining teams, Western and Eastern Conference. We're going to start with the West. So, Dylan, give me a team that you think in the Western Conference that's going to be on a decline this year.
I have to say the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I know they were the 8th seed last year. I know all that. But the thing about the Timberwolves is their team chemistry is horrendous.
Yeah.
And we didn't really expect this of Jimmy Butler, but he seems to be the one that's contributing to this the most. Earlier, about a month ago, there was a report saying that he was, kind of beefing with Karl Anthony Towns. And obviously before that, it was Andrew Wiggins who was upset with his role. So I think if they can't get the team chemistry right, this isn't a playoff team, especially since they barely squeaked in on half a game last season.
I have to say, I get your point, but I have to say I disagree. All the young guys, they're just like, there's no other way to go but up. They can't get worse. Like Towns was amazing last season. Like he shot 42% from 3. He was great from the post and the mid-range inside. He was great. Of course, he's still a defensive liability, but I just think Coach Tom Thibodeau, he's a defensive specialist, or at least that's what he proved to be when he was an assistant with the Boston Celtics, and then as a head coach with the Chicago Bulls. So I mean, I have my hopes on Thibodeau. Andrew Wiggins, that's another long story to talk about, but I still think that he can give the next step. Like Coach Tibbs has to get them engaged one way or another. I agree with what Dylan said, that if they do not get their chemistry issues like solved and quickly, they're going to struggle. But I like how the team started last season, and I just expect them to be better this year, especially Wiggins, who was really disappointing last year. So I have to say I disagree on that take and just expect them to be a little better. But the West playoff race is still gonna be a grind. So let's see how they do.
They're not in the playoffs next year. Dylan, I agree. I think this is a team on the decline. Who's going to get hurt this year? Everyone's going to be playing 42 minutes a game. Someone's going to go down. As Jorge alluded to, Andrew Wiggins, I mean, I'm massively disappointed in how his career so far has been. He is streaky. He defensively gives you nothing. He got paid, though. Shout out to that. Back when he played in Kansas, he was always kind of like hot and cold. Like one game, you think, wow, this guy's the next big like NBA talent, and then the next game, you'd be like, oh wow, this guy he had 8 points and barely wanted to shoot the ball. So he's just so up and down. I think Karl Anthony Towns is going to get better. I don't know. The teams in the West are so tough. I think the Spurs got better because they're actually going to have another All-Star playing this season. The Clippers, I think, are going to be tough. The Nuggets should be a lot better, I think. So I think the Timberwolves coming down makes a lot of sense, Dylan.
Yeah, and shout out Dylan real quick. He just wrote a piece for OTG Basketball about stars that could be traded. Jimmy Butler was on that list. What do you think is more likely to happen this season, Jimmy Butler to be traded or Tibbs to be fired?
Oh, I think it's definitely Tibbs to be fired. I mean, if you're playing your starters 40, 45 minutes a game,
there's not a good look.
And Derrick Rose for 30. Derrick Rose for 30 off the bench.
But you know something? I think the Timberwolves hired Thibodeau knowing this. Like, Tibbs has a long history of playing his starters and even like some of his bench players like for way too long. So I think the Wolves knew that Thibodeau, like they knew what he was going to do and what his plan was. So I still think that it's more likely that Butler's traded. Once again, I'm disagreeing right here, but
that's why we're here. We want all the different takes.
I love this team a year ago when they traded for Jimmy Butler. I thought he would really help Andrew Wiggins with his defense, but that just hasn't really been the case. Bielitsa is gone now, so it hurts their depth. Not that it matters with Tibbs as coach, but I mean, I don't really trust Derrick Rose anymore. That Cavaliers experiment, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Gorgie Dang, he's not that great. Shabazz Muhammad, he's still a free agent who wanted $20 million earlier last year. He's obviously not going to get that anymore.
He
but
went an entire year with only 8 assists one year. I can't remember. He had 8 assists for an entire season. Like, bruh, move the rock.
I believe he was actually cut by the T-Wolves last year or
Yeah,
something.
he was.
And he ended up with on the Bucks, where he had like a couple decent games, but yeah, he's a guy who definitely didn't cash out. That's what happens when you don't play defense or pass the ball.
Yeah, someone I'm really sad for is Tyus Jones, the backup point guard from the Wolves. I'm really sad because, we've seen some flashes of potential. Even last year, I think it was Jeff Teague who was injured for a couple of games, and then Tyus Jones came in and he filled in pretty nicely. So I think he deserves a bigger chance. I don't think Derrick Rose has anything to do with the Wolves. Like, I get it, he played for Thibs and he's playing with Jimmy and whatnot, but Rose has nothing to do. He has nothing left to prove, especially in a team with players with so much potential. So I think Coach Thibs should just left that backup point guard to Jones, because he doesn't play 3 point guards in the same game anyway. So it's really sad for Jones. I think it was at the end of last season that we heard he maybe wanted to get moved or something. But then Coach Thibs spoke to him and they solved stuff one way or another. But, it's really sad for him because he
seems like a messy situation, a messy locker room, like Dylan mentioned. Jorge, what team for you is on the decline in the West? What team do you think is going to kind of come into the season and not be as good as last year?
This might be another unpopular opinion, but I think the Blazers, they're on the come down. They barely got that 3rd seed. Like, once again, maybe they got it like 1 or 2 games over the 4th seed, and from 4 to 7 it was all the mess. At the 8th seed, the Wolves just clinched it the last day of the regular season, last game. So I think the Blazers are really going down. They might have gotten lucky. Like, I know you don't get lucky and win 13, 14 straight games like they did last year, but I think they got lucky for a stretch. They will play some really good defense, but I don't think they be able to, carry on that momentum, especially because I really dislike the backcourt duo of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. Like, not them as players, but the fit. Those are just two really good offensive players that are just all about shooting and driving and stuff. And McCollum's gotten a lot better too, but that doesn't cover up for their defensive deficiencies. McCollum is arguably the worst out of both, and Lillard, he tries and stuff, but I don't think that they'll be able to just keep
match
up.
Last year.
Yeah, as good as they did last year. They might end up as a 7 seed, 8 seed, in my opinion, but I don't think that they'd be able to, keep the momentum rolling as they did last year.
I don't think the Portland Trailblazers are better than the Dallas Mavericks right now.
Oh, hot take.
Yeah, the Dallas Mavericks added DeAndre Jordan. They already had Dennis Smith, Harrison Barnes. They also added Luka Doncic, who I believe is the best player in the draft. And I think defensively that team's a lot better than the Portland Trailblazers, and I do think they'd get in the playoffs over them should it be a matchup towards the end of the season. The Portland Trailblazers, you already mentioned it, Jorge. The backcourt, it's horrible defensively. Damian Lillard, All-NBA first team. CJ McCollum, just certainly not as good. Although he should be an All-Star, he's not. He's in the Western Conference, so it's just kind of hard for him to make the All-Star game. But that team has a lot of salary, so it wouldn't shock me if the trade deadline came around and to see one of those guys moved, maybe CJ McCollum for a young player and a pick or something like that. I'm not a huge fan of this team. They barely made the playoffs. They were 3 games over the threshold that they needed. So I'm just not a huge fan of them.
Yeah, this is the team that I chose as well for the decline. But I think this team is going to fall. You guys both made great points. I think this is a team where you could see possibly McCollum moved. If you guys listen to his podcast, Jump Up or whatever it is, he was talking about how, he's always on there's rumors about him being traded. Kevin Durant laughed. And I think he could be moved at the deadline if things go south. This team is only up here in the top of the Western Conference because, Lillard and McCollum they really carried the load for this team. Damian Lillard in particular was fantastic all of last season, obviously, by the accolades he received afterwards. But this team is not good. It's got a lot of holes. They could have used DeMarcus Cousins at center over Nurkic. I think that would have been a really fun thing. But, they just very weak, a lot of holes. I think this team is probably going to be fighting for the 7th or 8th seed when it comes to April next year.
Yeah, and you look at a lot of teams in the West that are probably going to get better, and Portland didn't really get much better this offseason. They lost some of their bench pieces, added a few guys, and we'll see what happens. But Kory, do you have any other teams you think that'll be on the decline?
I think a dark horse for a decline. I don't really know. I mean,
what do you think?
I want to say the Spurs, but I'm not going to go there because DeRozan now, and I don't know. Maybe the Clippers. I don't know. It's hard to say a decline. Other than those two for me.
Dylan or Jorge, anybody else from you guys?
I can't say the Houston Rockets won't decline because at the end of the day, they did lose Trevor Ariza and Amba Mute, but I don't think they're going to get any better. I don't think they're going to win 65 games like they did last year. And I don't think they'll be the 1 seed anymore, or even the 2 seed. I do think the Utah Jazz are going to be the better team than them this year.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about the Clippers. Losing DeAndre Jordan might be even tougher than losing Chris Paul or Blake Griffin, because they got something in exchange for both Paul and Griffin. They traded them away, but they got nothing in exchange for Jordan. Like, I get they traded for, was that Marcin Gortat, right? They traded
the Polish Hammer,
the Wizards. So they got Gortat, but Gortat won't catch lobs all the way up as Jordan did. He's decent inside, but he won't do poster dunks and catch all these lobs and grab as many rebounds and fly all around the court as DeAndre Jordan did. So that may hurt the Clippers' defensive identity. Doc Rivers, he has struggled a little bit with the team. It was a really sad story for them last year because they had some momentum going on, but then all these injuries started coming up. Like Beverly, they missed him for the whole season, and then Gallinari, all the messy stuff that happened there. So I thought the team had some potential last year, especially considering how good Lou Williams was playing. But yeah, I think losing DeAndre Jordan will be a big hit for the team. No matter they signed Mbamute and traded for Gortat, I don't think that's just going to make the cut.
Yeah, Gortat's definitely a downgrade. If you guys had to pick it between Portland or Minnesota making the playoffs, who would you go with?
Ooh.
That's a tough question, but
that's why I'm here.
I think I'd go with Minnesota over Portland, just because they have Jimmy Butler, who I think is a top 10 player in the NBA.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like the Wolves, they have a couple of very solid defensive guys in Jimmy Butler and Taj Gibson. So I think those two can at least help anchor the defense for the team right there. While the Blazers only have Nurkic, and I mean you can say Aminu or even Harkless, but
Nurkic. I hate you.
Excuse me. But I just think that defense is a really important part when it comes to especially those close games at the end of the season, making the playoffs. So yeah, definitely the Timberwolves.
What about you, Kory?
Can I just say one thing? This is the Timberwolves would have been so much better off if they signed Kyle Lowry a year ago instead of Jeff Teague. Could you imagine if they actually had a point guard who could play some defense?
That would be a nice fit. I mean, but then they would have been stuck paying Lowry a lot of money going into the last few years of his contract. I mean, either way, I think the chemistry issues is just huge for the Wolves.
I was just thinking, I don't know. They would have been, I think defensively, they would have been so much stronger. I think that also helps like Towns and Wiggins, maybe if they have a better like perimeter guard defender.
Lowry can play a little bit off ball too, more than Jeff Teague, I would say, in my opinion.
Right.
If we're talking about defense, then the Timberwolves should have signed Michael Carter-Williams.
That's your boy.
A very underrated aspect of Kyle Lowry's game is his 3-point shooting. So he could also have helped the Wolves in that department because, Andrew Wiggins, Jimmy Butler, they can make some 3-point shots, but they're not spectacular. But Lowry, I think he's one of the most underrated 3-point shooters in the league. So he could have really helped them there. Like Tigi's also, average 3-point shooter, in my opinion, like, decent. So adding Lowry would have also helped in that department. Thank God that Towns started making some threes last season and at a high clip, because they really, the spacing situation for them does not look too good moving forward.
But back to the question, Kory, who you got, Minnesota or Portland, and going to the playoffs if you had to choose between the two?
I say Portland. I think Minnesota gets worse. Sorry. I pick Portland, but I still think Minnesota gets worse and Portland gets worse. But I think Minnesota is going to be in crisis mode near the deadline.
Worst locker room this season. This is a random question: Washington or Minnesota?
Ooh.
Minnesota for sure. There's already bad blood. Washington has to build up. The Timberwolves just need a couple more strings to break.
Yeah, definitely the Wolves. As much as I'm excited for the potential they had, the locker room situation is pretty bad for them.
Yeah, I'd have to go Minnesota. It's just all the stories coming out of there have been a little bit off the wall. I mentioned it earlier. Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, and Jimmy Butler. It's just not a big three that's mixing very well.
Yeah, I think the fact that Butler's comments about Towns became public really hurt that locker room and that chemistry. Moving on to the Eastern Conference, though, Dylan, what team do you think will be on the decline? Let's exclude Cleveland because that's an easy one. I don't want to make it too easy for you guys. Everybody knows LeBron's in the Lakers now, and Cleveland's obviously going to have a drop-off. So what team in the East is going to be on the decline?
I have to go with the Milwaukee Bucks. And I know Giannis he's a top 5 player in the NBA right now. They have Eric Bledsoe. They have Malcolm Brogdon. They've got Tony Snell. They've got all these young pieces, but they haven't been able to put it together. And I think they continue that struggle. A year ago, I predicted them to be the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, but I think they'll be 7 to 8 again. But again, that's not too impressive considering how weak the Eastern Conference has become. So I think the Milwaukee Bucks are certainly a team that could be on the decline, although I do think Giannis Antetokounmpo will improve once again. They got Brook Lopez and Ersan Ilyasova, which are 2 pretty nice front court signings. So if they can stretch the floor up front, improve the defense, I think they could improve. But as for now, I just don't see it.
So here I come once again. I strongly disagree with this take. Again, you see, I think it was a couple of weeks ago I wrote an article about the Bucks and how excited I am for the team with new head coach Mike Budenholzer coming to town. I'm really excited to see what the team can be defensively, because offensively, even though they've struggled a little bit, they have Giannis, so he can always bail them out on most possessions, and they have Bledsoe, who's I've heard people call him mini LeBron sometimes, but he can do a little bit of everything. He's also a good defender. They have Middleton, who's a great 3-point shooter. They also have Brogdon, who might come off the bench. And with the addition of Brook Lopez, which will be interesting to see who starts at that center position, either Lopez or John Henson. So offensively, they've been good, but that thing that has not really worked for them thus far has been defense. So I'm really excited to see what they can do on that end. I expect them. I don't expect them to decline, but to go up in the standings, especially now without Cleveland in town.
I strongly disagree as well. I think the Bucks could actually be a top 3 seed in the East if everything goes right. I think Bud's going to get this team really moving the ball. Did they just sign Pat Connaughton too?
Yes.
Another guy who can shoot the ball. I think their spacing is going to be a lot better next year. I think even though I think Dante DiVincenzo at 17 was kind of a reach, I think he could be decent coming off the bench, just a 3-point threat. I think Tony Snell is going to get better. Dellavedova can stay healthy. He's still a threat. Chris Middleton's really good from deep. I think, if Antetokounmpo forms any sort of jump shot and takes his game even further, which we know he's going to, this team could be really tough to beat, especially because of their length on defense. I love the signing of Brook Lopez. This team is going to be really fun, I think, and a must-watch team.
Jorge, what about you? What team do you, or Dylan, did you have anything else you wanted to respond with that, or are you good?
I think I'm good, other than the fact that everybody seems to disagree with my statements. I'm fine.
Jorge, what team in the East do you think will be on the decline?
I'm between the Hornets and the Knicks. Like both
Oh,
teams.
come on.
Dylan's a Hornets fan. I don't think you knew that.
But I didn't know that. But okay, so I'll speak about the Knicks then. I was actually thinking to speak about the Hornets because I think Dwight Howard was a big loss for the team. I really liked what Howard did last season. He had that crazy, what was that, 30 and 30 game where he had 30 points and 30 rebounds.
Against the Nets, you got to bring it up. No, I'm just kidding.
I had to, right? So he had that really good game plus a really nice season. He's nowhere near the defensive player of the year level. He was playing in Orlando, but he can still contribute a little bit on the offensive end, even though he might demand some extra touches that he no longer needs anymore. But on the defensive end, he's still pretty mobile. He can protect the rim quite well. He can grab some defensive rebounds as well as offensive rebounds. So I think that will really hurt the Hornets. Who do they even have to start at the center position instead of Howard now?
Zeller, right?
It has not been decided yet. We have 3 options right now. Actually 4 if you include Frank Kaminsky, but he's but we've got Bismack Biyombo, who's probably going to be our 3rd center. We've got Billy Hernan-Gomez, who's the favorite to be our 2nd string center, and we've got Cody Zeller, who is, I mean, he's decent when he plays, but unfortunately for the Hornets, he's averaging like 40 games a season over the past 3 years. So
yikes.
Yeah, whatever happened to Hernan-Gomez? Like he was a starter with the Knicks for some time, right? Like 2 seasons ago, or so. I don't really remember. But so that tells the whole story. Like they'll lose a lot of interior defense without Howard, plus some offensive firepower every now and then. So I think that will be a big that's actually a big loss. Plus, I think Kemba Walker might be traded mid-season, like trade deadline with his contract expiring soon. The Hornets may be hesitant to pay him a lot of money, especially if things don't work out as the season goes on. So I also think Walker might be traded mid-season, which will just make the team worse than it already is. Excuse me.
Well, I strongly disagree with this for many reasons. Mainly, I'm a Hornets fan. They're trying to win now. Again, they haven't really improved. They added Miles Bridges, who's kind of a win now piece, but we do have a log jam on the wings. We've got like 1 or 2 too many players there. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist being one of them. So we have a lot more depth than we did last season, but we did lose Dwight Howard. That's a lot of production. But at the end of the day, I think Howard was doing more harm than good, especially in the locker room. I mean, he staggered the offense. He averaged over 3 turnovers a game. So I think it's addition by subtraction by getting rid of him. But at the same time, you're bringing back like Bismack Biyombo and 2 second-round picks, which isn't that great of a return. But I mean, the original trade was Timothy Mozgov and 2 second-round picks. But we got Bismack Biyombo and 2 other picks from the Magic for Mozgov. So
at least you can play Biyombo. You can't play Mozgov.
But that's actually a good point. I hadn't thought about. Like, I knew that Howard was doing some harm in the locker room, and he has been doing that for over his last stops. With the Lakers, with the Rockets.
Every stop.
Clashing. Yeah, we heard him clashing with Harden and stuff. So, I don't think that. I hadn't thought about that being like that big of a factor, especially because I'm a big Dwight Howard fan. But I still think he's big. He can still do some big things, and I'm excited to see him do some damage with the Wizards.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kemba Walker earlier and how he might be traded, and I thought he was going to be moved on draft night, especially after trading Howard for Timothy Mozgov and 2 assets. Obviously, that didn't happen. He's still with the team. But from what I've seen online, like Rick Bonnell, the Charlotte Hornets observer, He says that we're probably not going to move him unless there's like a Godfather offer. Godfather offer for Kemba Walker, I would presume, is a young player and possibly a pick. I think that's the most you're going to get for him at this point. But if he is moved, then yeah, I mean, we're going to tank. So I don't like the team. I mean, we're pretty stuck in terms of salary. But I mean, I wouldn't be too shocked to see us make the playoffs either.
I don't get why the Hornets are asking for that big of a return for Walker, because what do you think are the chances of Walker coming back anyways? Considering how bad the future looks for the team. Like, does Walker have any real incentives to come back other than maybe a couple extra $1 million? Why would he come back there and not go elsewhere?
Walker is one of the few guys in the NBA that has really demonstrated that he's loyal to his team. He's a true professional in that regard. And I think he would re-sign. I think there's like an 80% chance he does if he hits free agency. But other than that, it's up in the air.
Kory, I want to hear your thoughts on the Hornets.
I don't think they decline. So I disagree on that, but I don't think they improve. I just feel like this team, I feel like this team is just stuck right where it's at. I just don't see, they got rid of Dwight Howard and the Biyombo thing and the Mozgov. Does Kemba Walker stay through the year? I listened to the Adrian, his last name is so shitty, Wojnarowski, whatever podcast with Borrego. And Borrego was saying how him and Kemba have already talked. They're on the same page. They want to stay together and build with the Hornets. Whether front office sees that, sees eye to eye with that, who knows? But this team doesn't get much better. It doesn't get much worse. The East is, after you get underneath the top 5 seeds in the East, it's pretty much a roll of the dice. The playoff last year, the 8th seed was at 43-39. And that Wizards team should be better. But yeah, I think the Hornets pretty much remain the same, but they're not going to get much worse.
What team's on a decline for you, Kory?
Can I pick the Hawks? Is it?
Is that even valid? Like, they were the worst team in the conference last year.
Well, last year I predicted them to win 16 wins, and this year I think they're going to win 17 wins.
Trae Young making that instant impact.
He's a bust. I said it on draft night. I'll say it now. He's a bust. He's going to be out of the league in 6 years.
Wow. That was spicy. I think my laptop's on fire. No.
I haven't made a hot take like that in a while, but I just don't see it. That Luka Doncic trade is going to go down as one of the top 5 worst trades in NBA history.
I completely agree with that. Doncic, he's going to be the best player out of this draft, and I think the Hawks making that trade, that looked really, really bad. Shooters are the most boom or bust players in pretty much any draft, and usually they bust more than they boom. So,
yeah, I agree.
Schroeder, I mean, I understand it because Schroeder has the off the court problems, and at the same time,
and he wanted to be traded.
Yeah, and
they got Melo.
He's really an overrated 6 man.
I heard Melo is still looking, as Melo is trying to get his Hawks jersey just for his collection. Obviously, he didn't play and he was already waived, but he wants his jersey.
That's hilarious. That's really Melo.
Any other teams in the East you guys think will be on the decline?
Well, I mean, I said the Knicks earlier. I think losing Michael Beasley, who was, something of an offensive contributor. Plus, I don't think Porzingis will be ready for the start of the season. Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
No, he probably might not even be back till All-Star break or after. Like I've been saying, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't come back the entire season.
Yeah, so, not having Porzingis, who is undoubtedly the best player on the team, he's a great defender. He's great on offense too, and they lost Beasley, who was something of an offensive firepower every now and then. They don't have much else, They have pretty much the same roster. Oh, they also lost Kyle O'Quinn. I knew I was forgetting that. So they also lost Kyle O'Quinn, who, as you said, was a really solid center of the bench. And what else? I don't think they did much else this offseason.
They signed Mario Hezonja. I don't think they're interested in really competing. I think this is kind of an in-between year for them. So no objections from me definitely on the Knicks. But Dylan or Kory, anything on the Knicks front?
Yes, I have a hot take for you.
Ooh, let's hear it.
The Knicks are going to be the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference.
That one I can't see because I don't see KP being back until at least All-Star break.
I was really, really low on Kevin Knox going into the draft, but the one thing that I mainly criticized him for was his motor and ability to take over games. And in the summer league, he completely proved me wrong. His offensive and defensive potential it mixes so well to be a really, really good two-way player. I'm really a fan of his game. I just don't think there's many teams in the Eastern Conference that are going to compete to that 8 seed. If the Knicks don't slip up, I think that could be their slot.
I mean, I'll make the take that last year Porzingis doesn't get hurt, they probably are still fighting for an 8 seed last season even. So I think, the 8 seed is a possibility for the Knicks. I don't know if they make it. I don't think they got worse, but without Porzingis, I don't know when he's even supposed to come back, if he will even come back, and if he doesn't come back, this team is rather dreadful, I think.
I would say KP, I believe, got his torn ACLs in January or February. So you think minimum of a year. And if they're already in a negative perspective in terms of like 10 or 20 games under 500, I don't think I would bring him back. That's just my opinion. What are your guys' thoughts on when we'll see Porzingis next year?
I'd say probably midway through the season, probably about through 40 games or so.
Well, I'm no doctor, obviously, but I agree 100% with what Nick was saying just now. Like, there's no point in bringing Porzingis back if the team is already, tanking without even trying. Like, if they're just outright losers, then there's no point in bringing Porzingis back because then, they have to keep their lottery chances as high as possible. So, no point of bringing him back.
I'll say this: by December 1st, I will be completely surprised if this team is over 500.
Yeah, I would put money that they won't be, especially if Porzingis isn't there.
That's a month and a half into the season, right? More or less.
I don't think they'll need to be 500 to make the playoffs as an 8 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Oh, I disagree. No. I completely, wholeheartedly disagree. I think the East is going to be a lot tighter and a lot better than many people think. I think it's actually going to be better that LeBron's leaving. It won't be. I'm not saying the talent will be great, but I think we'll see. No team with a losing record will make it this year. Every team will have a winning record.
Interesting.
I agree with the take that it will be tight, but I think it will be like tight in a different way because the West was tight last season with 47 win teams, like the Wolves. I think they won 47, right? So it was pretty tight in that regard. But the East this season will be tight, like with 40 win teams or something. So, it's going to be tight as well, but with a lower, let's say, level of player.
Closer to 500 than 50 wins.
Yeah, exactly.
I get what you're saying, Jorge. Yeah, I could see that. I think the East will be tighter, but I wouldn't be surprised if the tightness is closer to 500 because the West is just going to really kick the crap out of the East on a regular basis. Right, but I think the Eastern Conference teams will kind of be all on a similar level where there's a couple teams in the East that are really separated when the other teams are kind of unsure. I think we'll have a better idea on a lot of teams, around December or January. But any other East teams you think will be on decline?
Dark Horse Pistons. I can
you
see
love those Pistons.
Pistons and Hawks just catch a lot of shade. I think for the Pistons, the health is such a huge thing for them. If Reggie Jackson can't play because of the knee tendonitis, if Blake Griffin gets hurt, like he tends to always get hurt, this team is once again going to be going towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference despite getting Dwayne Casey.
Like, for real, what have the Pistons even done, like, in 10 years? They've been, like, irrelevant for the past 10 years. And, it's so sad because when they first traded for Reggie Jackson, it seemed as if things were working out because he was actually playing all right at first. But
he put up big numbers.
Yeah, and we've seen a bunch of reports by the end of these seasons explaining how bad Reggie Jackson was and how negative, like he was actually a negative impact for the Pistons this season after coming back from the injury. So I don't know.
Knee tendonitis doesn't really get much better, to be honest. Getting older and your tendonitis in your knee is probably not going to get better. You just have to really learn to maintain it. But anything on that front, Dylan, on the Pistons?
The Pistons are an interesting team. You know, they got Blake Griffin, they have Andre Drummond. Reggie Jackson will be the key to that team. They're pretty weak on the wings. They have Luke Kennard, Reggie Bullock, a few other players.
Stanley Johnson, I think that's a big guy in terms of he's an X factor. If he can finally make a jump, or is he going to continue to kind of not be the guy they hoped he'd be?
Oh, it's going to be same as usual for him. I mean, it's hard for him to make a jump. You know, he's little to no offensive game. Defensively, he's pretty versatile, but for me, he's another Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, just on another team. So, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Pistons, but I could see them challenge for the 8th seed. So, I mean, they finished last season 7-3 in their last 10 games. So I think if they can continue to improve, then I think they're maybe one piece away from the playoffs and maybe like that 5-6 threshold.
Yeah, I think Dwayne Casey is kind of that hope for them. But Kory, you ready to take over for Overhyped and Underhyped?
Oh,
Yes, sir. So overhyped, underhyped, I name a player. You guys just pretty much tell me what you think. So we'll start close to home. Kemba Walker, overhyped or underhyped? I know where Dylan's going to stand.
I don't know how anybody could say that he's overhyped. He is the best player in Charlotte Hornets history. He leads the franchise in total points. And it seems like not a lot of people know this, but he is a top 10 point guard, despite what, you know, popular media likes to tell you about the Hornets. And he is the best player on that team. He's not as much of a defensive liability as he's made out to be. I think he's an average defender, despite him being like 5'11", 6 foot even. But I don't know how anybody could say overhyped.
yeah. Sorry, I 100% agree with what Dylan said. I don't think there's much I could add to what he said. But yeah, I cannot see him or anyone calling him overhyped. Definitely, I'm not sure if he's necessarily underhyped, but he's definitely not overhyped.
Yeah, I would agree with Dylan. I think he's underhyped. I think just the fact he plays in Charlotte doesn't give him much attention. Obviously, they haven't made a playoff splash or anything, so underhyped for me for Kemba too.
All right, so get ready for some tough ones. That was the easy one.
That's the layup.
Yeah, that's the last. So the first hard one, Kevin Love, overhyped or underhyped?
Ooh, that is a tough one.
Oh, that's pretty
Like
tough.
I said, it's gonna return up the heat a little, just a little.
Kevin Love, I would say he's underhyped. And I only say that because he's playing alongside LeBron James and was blamed for everything blamed for everything bad on the Cavaliers front for the past 2-3 years. So I gotta say underhyped. When he was in Minnesota, he was insane. And if he can just recover a little bit of what he was, then he will be a very good player for the Cleveland Cavaliers this year.
Yeah, I'm on that same front too. I would also say he's underhyped, especially because we didn't really get to see what he could do as a first option entering into his prime, because I would argue he was traded to the Cavs in the middle of his prime. So it's gonna be interesting to see what he can do in a Cavs uniform now that he's the best player on the team with LeBron and Kyrie gone. So yeah, underhyped.
I think this is a really interesting one because it kind of depends on who you're asking. And I agree with the front that, you know, when LeBron was there, he was definitely underhyped. People were like, he's not that good. But I almost feel like he's starting to get a little bit overhyped. People will be like, oh, he's getting back to Minnesota Timberwolves, Kevin Love. He's going to be the best player on the team. The Cavs are going to compete for the 8th seed. So I think like going to this season, he might be slightly overhyped. But over the last few years, he's been underhyped.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, I think now he's slightly overhyped.
People are expecting a really big season and him to really carry the Cavs, and like I think the injury front is what makes him scary. Like he hasn't
100%.
he hasn't played 80 games and I don't even know how long. And it just seems like Kory's mentioned this on a couple outlets. He's always getting these random injuries. Kind of reminds me of Darren Williams when he was with the Nets. He would just end up like jamming his finger, spraining his ankle, stepping on somebody's foot, like Kelly Olynyk pulling on his arm. That's just like such a random injury. I just feel like he has some bad luck.
For sure, that's where I stand too. And you know, he's had how many concussions? Like he's had a few.
Yeah,
never a good thing either, because you know, I mean, just getting your brain rattled is never good, believe it or not. So I and $30 million a year. I just, like I said, I think this is going to be a bad contract after about a year and a half of it. But I just don't know. Who knows? When you stop being the man of a team, it's not like you can just go back to being the man again. I mean, I don't know. I think it could be a tough transition for him to be, that kind of vocal point of the offense so quickly, especially with the team around him.
Yeah, the lack of other playmakers.
I just don't see it
really
anymore. He lost all that size. He can't really bully. Like when he was on the Timberwolves and he was the guy, he was a bully. He had some size. He could beat down low. I just don't think he's the same type of player anymore. So next up, now, all right. I mean, I don't know how people stand on him. Blake Griffin, overhyped or underhyped?
I feel like,
like I said, all of these are going to be borderline.
I feel like a lot of people have been saying he's overhyped over the past few months just because of that contract. And because of that, I'm going to say he's just a shade underhyped on Blake Griffin. His mid-range game, it's really good. Beyond that, I mean, he's okay. He can dunk the ball, I guess, which is fun. Him with Andre Drummond, the spacing isn't ideal, but they can both pass the ball, which is good for a front court. I'm not huge on Blake Griffin. I wasn't huge on him when he was in Los Angeles, but I do in fact think he's a little bit underhyped.
Yeah, I disagree with this take. I think he's a little bit overhyped. He's an awkward fit with the Pistons. I don't even know what they were trying to do in the first place when they traded for him. But thinking of Griffin as a franchise altering guy who can help the Pistons out of their misery randomly, I just don't think that happens. And I think that's how the Pistons looked at Griffin last season. But that injury history is not nice also, and as Dylan said, the contract situation is not good either. So yeah, I'm a little bit on the other side. I think he's a bit overhyped.
I'm going to go with Dylan on this one. I think he's a shade underhyped. As soon as he got to Detroit, everyone just assumed he was going to be this guy. Now everyone just kind of thinks that he sucks because they didn't make the playoffs, but he still has a skill set. And I think kind of like what Jorge said, the fit is somewhat of the problem. If you paired him with somebody else that could kind of shoot threes in the front court or just a better spacing team, I think it would work out, because I think an underrated fact of his game is his passing. Like, he's definitely developed his skills from when he first came in the league and he could just dunk the ball. Now he has a little bit to his game. So I think he's a touch underhyped.
I'm going with a touch overhyped as well. I just think his game is plateaued. I think if he was able to be a little bit healthier, if his legs didn't kind of break down these past couple seasons on him, because his athletic ability has really taken a step backwards. You're right. He can pass the ball. His mid range is filthy from where it used to be. He's really actually become a rather all around complete player. But I just don't see him getting any better. And for the money he's being paid, what people expect him to be, I think he's slightly overhyped. Still probably an all-star in the East.
I think this will be a big year for him. Getting to being in Detroit, I think it's just like obviously going from playing in LA with the Clippers to playing with Detroit in Motor City. It's a little bit different type of thing, especially with the pieces around him too. Going to playing with, Chris Paul to now playing with a Reggie Jackson who's not there all the time. I think it definitely is going to hurt your career. But the health thing is definitely important on the Blake Griffin front.
I think it's funny because, playing with DeAndre Jordan and playing with Andre Drummond, it's basically the same, right?
I would say it's similar. I think DeAndre is a little bit easier with the oops in a way, but I don't know. I think Andre Drummond kind of wants to be the man a little bit more, where DeAndre is a little bit more okay just being that role guy, collecting rebounds and stuff.
Yeah, that's a nice take. I like what you're saying.
Who you got next, Kory?
Phoenix Suns shooting guard, Devin Booker. Overhyped or underhyped?
That's a good one.
Oh,
I mean,
that's hard.
He's underhyped. I mean, if Lou Williams didn't shine, if Jimmy Butler didn't shine last year, he would have been in the All-Star game. And he averaged, I think it was 25 points per game. And with another star player, that efficiency is only going to go up. Obviously, the Suns didn't have that player, and they really still don't even have a point guard for him. But I think he's definitely underhyped. He's only 21 years old. I think he has more points than Kobe Bryant did at his age, which is just insane when you think about it. But Devin Booker, he's going to be really good when he gets older. He already is. So I got to go underhyped here.
No, once again, I disagree. I think he's a bit overhyped, especially because of the scoring thing. You know, he's a good scorer, but I just think he's putting up empty numbers. I mean, he had no other thing to do with the Suns last year. Like, what else could he do? Pass it to Tyson Chandler, or he really had no other option but to try and be the man. And he has actually done pretty well in the spotlight, let's call it. But I think the fact that he's putting up some empty numbers makes him a little bit overhyped.
I'm pretty much going to stand in the middle on this one. I don't think he's overhyped or underhyped. I would maybe, if I had to lean one way, it might be underhyped because of what Dylan said, the age. I think people forget how young he is because he's already been in the NBA so long and already has done so many things. I think the age is what really makes him an enticing player. Like, he's just going to get better. He's going to kind of hit that mid-20s where he's going to be able to kind of put on a lot more muscle. And I think that's going to be a big factor for him defensively because he's not a great athlete. So when he adds some strength, I think that's going to really help his game. And I also got to show Michael Sanchez love because he just shouted out D'Angelo on Twitter. So I got to make sure I don't cause any bad blood.
Got to keep up appearances.
What do you think about Devin Booker defensively? Like, can he genuinely be better?
I think if he adds muscle, I mean, like when you're not athletically gifted laterally, I think the one thing you have to do is be able to add strength and kind of be a stern defensive force. And then obviously just learning defensive tendencies of different players in the league. Obviously positioning is huge for somebody who's not super athletic. So I think there's plenty of room for improvement. I don't think he'll ever be an elite defender, but I think he could at least be an average to an above average guy if you were able to kind of focus on the other things.
All right.
I will say that Devin Booker is younger than his brand new teammate who was drafted this year, Mikal Bridges. He is 1 month younger than Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges was born August 30th, 1996. Devin Booker was born October 30th, 1996.
And now I feel old. But
and Booker's been in the league for what, 3 years, right?
3 years, yes.
Wow, that's crazy.
I mean, getting that NBA experience at such a young age is just huge. And I mean, he's like you kind of said, Jorge, he's handled the spotlight very well for such a young kid. Obviously, Phoenix isn't a crazy media place that like LA or New York is, but still, he's done a pretty good job being that guy.
Definitely agree.
And just to wrap this up, overhyped for me. I don't know. I'm not ever a big fan of guys who score a lot on bad teams right away. I'm just skeptical of it. You know, Michael Carter-Williams, your guy, Dylan, looked really good on the Sixers that first year, and look at him now. Obviously, he is a scorer. I mean, he's always, I think, going to be a good scorer. I don't know how efficient he'll be, but he can score. Like you said, defense, Nick. When he puts on weight, who knows? Maybe he can, start using his body more and be a better defender. I don't know. For me, I just think he's a little bit overhyped. I just haven't seen it. But also, I don't watch a ton of Sun games, so I guess I can't give a full. I think I've watched Devin Booker probably a dozen times.
Him and D'Angelo Russell have been working out a lot together. They've been putting a lot of work in the gym, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some body changes for him next year.
Okay, Kory, I was okay with your take, and then you brought Michael. And it just completely went down from there. So I gotta say, I disagree.
Who you got, Kory?
I completely understand. He's Syracuse all the way. Big guy. Last guy before we head out on our own evenings and nights.
Let's make it a good one.
I'm gonna make it a bad one now. Lonzo Ball, overhyped or underhyped?
I like this pick a lot. Lonzo Ball. His dad likes to overhype him a lot, actually. He was very good for the Los Angeles Lakers last year. Maybe not offensively, but defensively he was really, really good. So I'm gonna say underhyped. And Lonzo Ball, if he can fix his jump shot and just get better with his efficiency, I think he can be an all-star guard in his prime. And I think he could be one of the best players out of that really, really loaded draft class with Donovan Mitchell, with Jason Tatum, Josh Jackson, those type of guys. I think Lonzo Ball, I think he's underhyped.
Yeah, I agree with what Dylan said. Taking into account how the Rookie of the Year race was taken over by Ben Simmons and Donovan Mitchell, and even Jason Tatum with the noise he was doing in the playoffs. Even though the playoffs don't count toward the Rookie of the Year, but those three were making a lot of noise. last season. I think a lot of people forgot about how good Lonzo was, and maybe you like his impact was not like immediately recognizable simply with the eye. But yeah, as Dylan said, he was a really good defender. You know, for a first year guard, he held his own against other way more experienced players. And I disagree with the opinion that he needs to fix his jump shot. Like, I just think he needs to get more reps on, because at the end of the day, you can have whatever jump shot you want, and as long as you're consistent with it, if you make him well, that's fine. So I just think he needs a couple more years, you know, training with NBA players, you know, getting more experience. And yeah, I agree, he definitely can be an all-star. He has all the tools, even though his father likes to make a big deal out of him, which is kind of sad because leads to people thinking that he's a bad kid, while he's not. You know, the thing is, his father makes a big deal out of him, but you know, he's like Lonzo, he's quite the opposite. You know, he's quite chill. He doesn't speak too loud. He doesn't say a lot of, you know, he doesn't make a lot of headlines with his quotes. So yeah, I think he's underhyped.
I'll say he's overhyped by LeVar and Laker fans, but by everybody else, he's kind of underhyped because of what you guys said. I think it's the intangibles. You know, the jump shot, I think he does need to change it because I think the release point is too low and it's too slow. You want to get something a little bit quicker in the NBA, especially with the athletes. They're only going to get better. But I think by most of the NBA media, he's a little bit underhyped because there was so much hype because of LeVar coming out of the draft that he was going to instantly be Rookie of the Year, be this point guard, ready to be, you know, an all-star player. But he does need to add to his game. But I think the basis of his game is really good, and you can kind of just add to those small things and really take that next level.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm really excited to see what Lonzo can do under LeBron James. You know, he'll have the best player, arguably in history, but at least right now, the best player in the league. You know, he'll be learning a lot of things from him. Obviously, LeBron, a great playmaker, a top playmaker in the league as well. So, you know, with how good Lonzo is, it would be really, really interesting to see what he learns from such a good player like LeBron.
I think what's most impressive about Lonzo, especially defensively, is, you know, before last season started, Patrick Beverley, you know, he started it off, but everybody was coming for his head on offense. You know, they wanted to drop 50 on him, and he held his own, and he was really good.
So you guys are gonna make me do it, right?
I know, right? Lonzo's Kory's boy.
Lonzo Ball is overhyped, and it's nothing to do with his father. His father can talk all he wants, and I actually think Lonzo Ball will be a good NBA player, but I do not see the whatever ceiling some people see for him. I see a guy who can probably average, you know, like 12 and 9, which is good. You know, I think he can be a very consistent, steady point guard. But I'm also really worried about his injuries. I mean, this guy's been banged up a lot this first year in the NBA.
That's a fair point.
You know, he got hurt 2 times during the season. He had the meniscus tear in the offseason. I mean, this is a young kid already getting kind of beat up by injuries early. Obviously, nothing too serious, but it's something to keep an eye on. And he's already not an efficient jump shooter. And who knows how his body digresses. If he can't drive, then he has to he's forced to, you know, use that jump shot more. It could be a problem for him going down the road. So I just think he's slightly overhyped at this point. I just think I need to see more. And like you guys mentioned, you know, he's playing with LeBron James now, and they're going to be a 45-plus win team with LeBron James. So he probably will take some sort of step forward in his game, just playing alongside, you know, one of the greatest of all time.
And so a little bird told me that this might be included in OTG's Hot Take Marathon. That'll be coming up on August 1st. Somebody might have written about Lonzo and LeBron, so keep an eye out for that. But guys, as always, Dylan, Jorge, Kory, thanks for hopping on. It's been a pleasure, and thank you everybody for listening. Check us out on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. Share, retweet, and let us know at OTG Basketball.